Okay. Morning. Before we get our tefillah discussion, quickly I want to say something about the parsha, which I know we haven't done in a while, but it's something that I feel is very important, fundamental, and it's an understanding that a few years ago I thought of, and this year, as we discussed it on the Shabbat table in our home, my oldest daughter added something very important to close the issue, the topic. The Torah, in one of the most, what I feel, one of the most exciting and emotional psukim in the Torah, in the end of the parsha we just read 2 days ago, Balotcha, the Torah says, "Vayish Moshe anav meod mikol ha'adam asher al pnei adama." To receive such a definition of a human being, that the most humble that will ever exist on the face of the earth, that's something very exceptional. It just says who Moshe Rabeinu was. He was a leader. He had done so much in his life, and yet so humble. And it's probably due to him being so humble that he was able to reach such high levels, because we know that anava is the most important attribute a person can have. That's how the Messiah Yesharim says it, and in many places in Chazal, and in Mishlei, and in the Ramban, famous Igeret Ramban, the letter that he wrote to his son, he shows how anava is the most important attribute a person can have. So, but the question is, okay, so Moshe Rabeinu reached the ultimate level of a human being, the highest form of worshiping Hashem that can ever be. But why does the Torah decide to say this exactly then in the Parsha of Balotcha, at the end of the Parsha, when Miriam and Aaron speak Lashon Hara, say Lashon Hara about Moshe? Yishachu shit lakach. Why then? Why is that so exceptional that Moshe Rabeinu's reaction is so special? He deserves this tremendous pasuk to say that he's the most humble and pious person ever to live. We can find there are other incidences where Moshe Rabeinu proved what a great anav he was. For example, in Parshas Kitisa, by the Chet HaEgel, when Hashem says, "I'll demolish the Jewish people on the face of the earth, and I'll make you the new forefather of the Jewish people. You'll be the only one left, and from your children, there'll be the new beginning of Am Yisrael, of Klal Yisrael." And Moshe Rabeinu reacts, "If you do so, I don't want to. I'm not accepting the deal. The deal falls through. I don't agree to be the continuer of Am Yisrael, a new beginning of the Jewish people, if they're not left to live, to exist." So why not there? Does the Torah not say, "Veish Moshe anav meod"? That also proves that he was tremendous anav. He didn't look for his own pride. He could have said, "Yes, I want to be the forefather of the Jewish people. I want to be the new beginner of the Jewish people. Let them all go. Let them all be demolished, and I'll be left alone, and everything will start from me." But he didn't say that. He reacted like a real humble person to say, "It's not about me, it's about my people." And there are other instances when they say, "V'nachnu ma ki talidu aleinu," and they complain about something. I think it was the man or something. So they say, Moshe Rabeinu reacts, "V'nachnu ma ki talidu," who are we that you're complaining to us? We're nothing. And the Gemara says that there were 3 most humble people to ever exist in the world: Avram, Moshe, and David. Avram said, "V'anochi afar va'efer," I'm like dust. Moshe said, "V'nachnu ma," we're nothing. And David said, "V'anochi tolat v'lo ish," like a worm, not even a human being. And the Gemara says that Moshe was the most anav because he says, "V'nachnu ma," we're nothing. Avram at least compared himself to dust, something. And David compared himself to worm, which is also something. But Moshe said, "Nachnu ma," we're nothing. So all these cases where we find Moshe Rabeinu truly being an anav, why doesn't the Torah say then, why dafka at this point where Miriam and Aaron speak Lashon Hara, that's when the Torah decides to tell us how humble Moshe is. So a few years ago, I thought of an idea that would explain this very well. Besides all those cases that we spoke about, besides all these cases where he proves to be a very tremendous, pious, humble person, there's one thing much more major than all this. And that is the fact that we don't find in the entire Torah. I tried searching and thinking of all the entire Torah, all 5 Chamisha Torah, from the moment Moshe Rabeinu is born till he dies, there's not one time where one person comes over to him and says, thank you. You don't find in the entire Torah that anyone shows gratitude to Moshe Rabeinu. He did so much for his people, the most a human being can ever do. The greatest leader of all times, of all nations, of the universe. He did so much for them, and he gave up so much of his own life to help them, to help his people, and to treat them like his own sons, like his own children. And yet, never do we find that anyone comes up and says, thank you. It's an interesting question. But at least I'll go further. Go further than that, at least that we don't find by most of the leaders. Not only does no one pay gratitude or no one praises Moshe for all that he's done, but they keep on complaining and complaining and complaining. That's something we don't find by other leaders. That all the people do to him is complain, and criticize. You're not good. You didn't. Why did you take us out of Egypt? We want to go back. Tons and tons of times. And the mere fact that they sinned so heavily in the Midbar, in the desert, is also against Moshe Rabeinu. He was teaching them how to behave, and they misbehaved in a very bad way, very serious misbehavior. Their sins are terrible. So all that is like smacking Moshe in his face. So besides not paying gratitude, besides not encouraging and praising him for all that he did for them, they yet go and criticize him and complain to him and sin so heavily against his preaching and teaching. I think if I may say, none of us could exist. It's a life-threatening situation to have to deal with such people. When you don't get any good word for what you've done, we couldn't exist. We would have quit at least being the leader, if not quit life in general, because you just fall apart. If all you can perceive is criticism and and negativeness, you break down. We all need encouragement. We all need the good word. Someone telling us how good. Now, it's not necessarily gava. It's almost natural. It's a natural human need, necessity, that people encourage us because we want to go forward. We want to do better and better. That can only be if we get encouragement. And here, not only does he not get encouragement and positive feedback, he's getting negative feedback all day long, every day of his life. From the very beginning, when he killed the Egyptian, before he became the leader, when he was yet in Egypt, and when he was a young man, he killed the Egyptian. The following day, he wants to settle between two Jews, and they say to him, "You want to kill us like you did the Egyptian?" Already they're complaining. Already he just helped them and killed an Egyptian, a cruel Egyptian, and they're complaining. Forget about when he comes back, returns 60 years later, and starts helping let my people go. And they get, Paul becomes even more strict. They complain, what have you done? You haven't helped us. You just made things worse. Anyhow, this is the Adava. This is where Moshe Rabeinu proves to be Ha'ish Moshe Anav Me'od Mikol Adam Asher Pnei Adamah. None of us would have been able, no human being could continue living Bichlal, let alone leading, let alone helping his friends, his fellow friends, and fellow people, or his people when they act so negatively towards him. But now comes the blow. Because until now, we spoke about the people in general, the nation in general. But I hope when he came home from a day's work, Moshe Rabeinu got home to his tent, he sat down, reclined on the sofa, on the couch, took a deep breath, and said, wow, that was a difficult day, and to rest a while. And then, if not his wife, because he had to divorce her, because of Hashem commanding him to do so. So if not from his wife, at least his brother and sister. His brother and sister were around there to say, pat him on the back, on the shoulder, and say, Moshe, you're our brother. You did so well. You're so amazing. Thank you so much for all you do for our people. Keep on going. At least a little encouragement he must have received from his close family, from his brother and sister. At least that got him going. Enabled him to continue. The point where he could have broken down completely, totally, and even to the point of just leaving everyone and going away. Was this point in this last week's part, in this 2 days ago's parsha? Miriam and Aaron, his last resort for positive feedback, where they encourage him, hopefully, when he gets home after a tiring day, even they speak negatively about him. Even they say Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabeinu. He's not good enough for them either. That's a breaking point where impossible to continue. Impossible. You can't fathom such a situation. And even your closest family members speak negatively. And it's all wrong. Hashem says to them, he takes them out, he calls them out, Aaron and Miriam, how dare you speak this way about Moshe Rabeinu? Bechol beiti ne'emanu, pe pe adaber bo, mareh velo v'chidot, u'tmunat Hashem yabit, u'mador lo yirateh ledaber b'din Moshe. How can you not have feared to speak negatively about my servant Moshe Rabeinu? So it was all wrong. It was Hotzah Shemra, not only Lashon Hara. It was a lie, about negative lie about him. And yet, his reaction is unbelievable. Vayomar kel na refa na la. He prays for the well-being of Miriam, that Hashem should cure her from her leprosy. And he doesn't say a word to challenge them with what they had done to him. So at that point, nothing else has to be said besides Vayish Moshe Anav Me'od Mikol Adam Asher Al Pnei Adamah. At that point, it's impossible. We couldn't have existed anymore. But he continues on, and not only does he continue, he prays for the well-being of those who spoke negatively about him. That's complete anava. He has nothing, an iota of care for himself, rather for his people. That's all he cares about. And that's the most humble person in the world. And all his strength, where does he get his strength from to continue? Only from Hashem. No human being, no creature in the world gave him any encouragement. Only Hashem. So that's a true anav. It's not a person who doesn't do anything. He does a lot. But he does a lot despite others who don't acknowledge the fact that he's doing things for them. That's true anava. He doesn't need the encouragement from outside. He's encouraged from himself, from inside. Internally, he knows he's doing the right thing. That's all he cares about. That's true anava. That's tremendously high level. And then you're the most perfect person because you're doing things only because you know they're right, not because society encouraging you and telling you how good you are, and then you want to please them, and then you do things to please others. He's completely lined up with Hashem, lined up with the good of his people, nothing to do with what they say or do towards him. That's a perfect person, perfect human being, and that's who Moshe Rabeinu was. The most perfect human being ever. So, yeah. Oh, yeah?
He brought it down in terms of Rav Soloveitchik, adding 1 and adding 2.
Aha.
Ilu, Moshe 1 and Moshe 2.
Aha.
So he said, but before the, like you had to go to the low point and have the breakdown, like kill me. How could I do all, I can't take these people and everything to like learn the total lesson.
That's exactly what, before he came in, I said that this year.
I didn't want to say because I knew I was late.
Yeah, no. I didn't say it yet, but I when I began saying this about Torah, I said that this year, this I've been saying for a few years already, but this year, as I said at the Shabbos table, I'm always hoping that my kids don't remember for previous years and I can say it again. Yeah, also true. Both ways are good.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win, right. It's a win-win. Anyhow, so the discussion this year led to exactly that point that my oldest daughter, my married daughter, she said that all that I said up to this point without Rivki's addition, all that I said until now doesn't necessarily mean that he was an anav. Why? Because there's what we call autism. Autist is a person who doesn't need feedback from society because he's not a sociable person. He's not a person that he's like living in a bubble and doesn't care what people say or don't say to him. It's a disease. It's a defect. It's a problem. But some people are like that. And if I may add, Rav Aviner has said this many, many times with Shlomo Aviner, that all men are autistic. The men have a certain level of autism in them. So, so who says that Moshe Rabeinu was such an anab? Maybe he was like all men are, al retzef we call it, on the spectrum. Thank you. On the spectrum. So he could have been a person who doesn't need because it's like autist. Chas v'chila, of course. We know it's not true, but where do we find that he's not so in order to then to come back to being a remarkable human being that is sociable and does have a connection to all that goes around him, and yet he's not affected by the negativeness that's always thrown at him. So the answer is exactly because of this point that we said, Rivki mentioned the name of Rav Sachs, that in this week's Parsha also, in Parshas Ba'alotzcha, right before the incident with Miriam, he broke down and said, I can't take it anymore. Now, an autist doesn't break down in that situation because he doesn't care what they say about it. So this comes to prove that he was normal. He was a normal human being. He had social skills. He was part of society. He felt bad when mud was thrown at him, and yet he kept on going. So that proves how tremendous anav he was, and not a person who's in a bubble and doesn't care about society. Okay, so that's I just felt this time that yeah. Shlach. I don't think I want to go there. Maybe we'll speak afterwards because we're running out of time, and next week's parsha again is another whole discussion. So gladly after Shia. Okay, sorry. Okay, so we'll do quickly a little more of the tefillah discussions. We're in the middle of Hatzadikim, of the Brachot of Hatzadikim. We mentioned all the different levels. We said it going from lowest to highest level. Tzadikim, Chasidim, Zkenim, Sofrim, Gerim, Aleinu, and us, and all of us. So we've got step by step, level on top of level, one on top of the other, that we ask from Hashem to be merciful. Be merciful over all of us and all those individuals that we mentioned before. And then we said, last time we left it open, an open question. The next line, those who trust you truthfully, bestow upon them good fortune. So firstly, we're emphasizing those who trust you really, be'emet, so not falsely. Sometimes people say, yeah, Bezrat Hashem, Baruch Hashem, they're saying all these words, but they're not really believing. We said that it's like a person who thinks if they work harder, more and more hours, they'll make more money, they'll make more parnassah. That's not true. Hashem has a plan, pre-planned every year, Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, how much a person will earn that year. As the Chovas Alevavos, or Rabeinu Bechayim says, Acharitzut sheker. Person who thinks to work very, very, very hard, he'll make more and more money. Doesn't matter. Hashem can decide how much money he'll make that year. So if he does make more money, he'll lose it somewhere else. So the idea is, obviously, we're not against working. We must work. We have to do ishtadlus, but we work normal hours, and Hashem will supply what's meant for us to receive, what we're meant to receive that year, by working normal hours. If we suddenly get a gift with someone, or in the lottery or whatever, and Hashem gives us more money that we're supposed to get that year, in different ways. Doesn't help to work harder. So what are we meant to do with our extra time? If we're not filling it with so much work, learn Torah, be more spiritual, be more connected, pray stronger with more kavana, longer than the speed that usually you go through in tefillah. So there are different ways to balance our life, and the Torah expects of us to do both. There's a shach in the on Yoreh Deah, Shulchan Aruch, Yoreh Deah, Reish Mem Vav, Siman 246. The shach quotes the Prisha, who says that for the Balabatim, who can only learn 3-4 hours a day, they should be learning this and that. So every time I read that shach, I smile, because 3-4 hours a day is almost like a Bal Yeshiva already. Vrech that has so much time to learn. But that's what's meant to be. A balabat is meant to learn 3-4 hours a day. If you work 8 hours, which is a nice day's work, and the rest of the hours you learn, you have 3-4 hours a day to learn. So you have a nice night to sleep, you still have a nice fine time to eat. Yeah, it's time to do 12 hours to do whatever you need, and 12 hours to worship Hashem by 8 hours working and 4 hours learning. That's what should really be the course of a person's life. So that's Habotchim b'shimcha be'emet. They're not just saying, yeah, Hashem is there, Hashem exists, Hashem is everywhere. But really, they act like almost, unfortunately, chiloni, meaning there's nothing really different between the way they act and the way a chiloni does. Except for they spend some time davening. But again, if it's not true from inside, then even their davening isn't worth much, because they're just saying the words and going home. It's not something that's real coming from inside. So all this is what's meant to, in the words of Botchim b'shimcha be'emet. We always have to test ourselves. Are we really trusting Hashem, really believing in Hashem, or is it just lip service? Basfatayim. We just say so, but it's not really inside us, very strongly inside us. This affects our entire life, how we do things. But now the question we had asked last week, how come we're asking for Sachar Tov? Since when, at the ultimate level of worshiping Hashem, since when do we care for the Sachar Tov, to receive good fortune or reward for what we're doing? We know from the Pirkei Avos, Mishnah Pirkei Avos, Al tiyu ka'avadim המשמשים את הרב על מנת לקבל פרס, אלא הביאו כעבדים המשמשים את הרב שלא על מנת לקבל פרס. Don't be like a servant who serves his master in order to receive some prize or better salary or whatever it is. Be a type of servant that's serving his master without any expectation to be rewarded in any way. Just worship your master. Just aid your master with whatever he needs, because you're so respectful towards him, and you feel the greatness of your master that you don't care for reward. We worship Hashem not because of rewards. We worship Hashem because we believe He is the Almighty. And anything He asks us to do, we do it happily. That's called Avodas Hashem Lishma. Lishma, for no gain. Just because He commanded us. We feel so in awe of Hashem and so respectful towards Hashem that we appreciate Him totally, and we just do what He says. That's how we should worship Hashem. And now we're standing in front of Him within our 2 meters, 4 amos, right in front of us. He's here. Baruch atah Hashem. We're speaking to Him directly, and we're saying, please give us good. Please give us a reward. Then sachar tov. That's like the lowest of the low. To say that to Hashem, speaking to directly in the most holy circumstance of Shmoneh Esrei. That's the closest we can get in our whole lifetime is Shmoneh Esrei. Closest we can ever get to Hashem is pray Shmoneh Esrei. That's how Chazal tell us that Hashem comes down, and Shechina comes down right in front of us and listens to our davening. Every single Shmoneh Esrei we daven, He's right there. And here we say to Him, give, give, give. That's what we should be saying. And maybe if we say it after Lokain Tzom, but before Yile Ratzon, then when you can add all your requests, then you can say to them, give, give, give. Maybe. Even that's not the best thing to pray for. But right smack in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, in Ala Tzadikim Ve'ala Hasidim, we're saying Ten Sachar Tov. A very tremendous question. So I couldn't really find a good answer. I tried looking for this question all over the place. I tried like 10 books of tefillah, and I didn't find anyone discussing this question. Dafka Rav Aviner's book, Tfilat Amcha, which goes through every word of davening from Modiani through Enke Lokeinu. Every word of davening goes through very carefully and extensive discussions on every word. So he does raise this question. He does discuss this. His answer is, I guess, the best you can get for this question. His answer is, we're not really asking for sachar because we look forward to receiving good fortune or reward for what we're doing. That's not the idea here. He says, since Hashem promises in the Torah, Hashem promises us that when we do like He requests, then we'll have a good life. So we're sort of telling Hashem, you know, that Sachar Tov that you told us about, here we're trying to be the most righteous we can. Hatzadikim, Hasidim, Zikne, we're talking about the most righteous people, and both Chimishimcha be'emes, we're included in those who trust you really, sincerely, truthfully. Then, according to your promise, we're supposed to have a good life. That's what we're saying. We're not dependent on the reward you give us. It's like natural. It's like saying to a doctor, please subscribe this and this medicine so I feel better.
What is the star?
Yeah.
It's just not talking about star. So like, we're not saying we want to reward material, more like Rachel Menu, like Yesh Star Little Types. We're talking about spiritual star and returning Rula. Like, why does star have to be something that we think of like just a
physical, yeah, materialistical. That could be a nice idea, but even that, if you're at the level of lishma, then you're not looking at anything besides fulfilling Hashem's commandments, even not spiritual reward.
spiritual reward. It's just to better serve Hashem.
From that point of view. I see what you mean. So then if so, you could... Actually, she wasn't saying that. It's Yirmiyahu speaking about her.
Right.
That right of her that Bini kolechi bechi. And I can remember ki esahai lefulatech nu b'Hashem v'sham bani ligvulam v'shamu be'eretz oyev.
But that's what the star is talking about.
Yeah, then definitely it's shamu bani ligvulam. It's like spiritually that should all return to their homeland. And what are we returning for? To worship Hashem. Right, but if you're going there already, then it reminded me, Sarah's reminding me of the Rambam, who says that in general, all the so-called sachar that we find in the Torah, that if we follow Hashem's words, we get this, and that, and if we don't, we suffer this and this way. The Rambam says none of that is sachar really. It's not sachar. Ain't sachar ba'olam hazeh. We don't get any reward or any punishment for we do it right or don't do, or we're wrong about sinful. Nothing goes on in this world. That's in the world to come. All that the Torah promises, person who is righteous and does what Hashem wants, or chas v'chila, the opposite, all that is just to help us continue worshiping Hashem. That's all it is.
But that's still. So Yirmiyahu says this, and then the Medrash Eicha tells this story of Brachot Menu, but all it is to better serve Hashem.
Right. So that is okay to speak about. That if we're doing the right thing and we're trying to worship you, Hashem, let us worship you the best we can. Right.
That's all I'm saying. Maybe that's the start.
So that could be the sachar. Okay, fine. Just that usually that's exactly where the problem is, that we don't refer to as sachar. And that's really what Rav Einer's actually your answer and Rav Einer's answer are the same. It's two sides of the same coin. We're saying here, naturally, since we worship you, Hashem, let us do so comfortably. Let us have a life that's comfortable to serve you. Because if we're searching for food, we don't have enough parnasa, we don't have chas v'chila children, or the children are getting married, or all kinds of things like that. So it's bothering us to worship you because our mind is caught up with other things. We want a life that's smooth, naturally smooth, in order to worship you the best we can and do all that we can for you, Hashem, and not have to worry about all kinds of other things. That's really what. So that's the same as Rav Einer's answer also. So you're saying the same idea. It's not to be rewarded; it's to have a comfortable life to worship you, Hashem. Let us be comfortable, and spiritually also. Let us climb levels higher and higher levels in spirituality. Right, but in general, it can be all kinds of things like that. Right. So that's definitely okay. That's a good enough answer. The words don't fit exactly that answer because sachar tov, we usually say the word sachar as a reward and not as a comfortable life. The Gemara explicitly in Kiddushin Mem 40b, the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yaakov, schar mitzvah behai alma leika. We don't receive sachar for all the good deeds we do in this world. It's all in the world to come. This world is just do, and we don't get. We don't receive. We just do. That's this world. Hayom la'asotam u'machar lekabel scharam. Machar meaning after this world. This world we do. Asher bara Elokim la'asot. Just do. Reward, forget about it. That's for the next world. And here we're talking about sachar. The word sachar is what bothers a little bit, still bothering me. Because the word sachar specifically refers to reward that's usually, doesn't matter spiritual or physical, but it's usually coming as a gift to what we've done. And not just a comfortable life that we can follow you, Hashem. But that's the best way we can answer this line. Otherwise, we're really stuck. And just to finish this bracha, V'sim chelkeinu imahem, Some say leolam, and some say leolam lo nevosh. The vav in the two different versions of this bracha, it doesn't really matter. Hashem, we should allow us to be part of these, meaning those who are both b'shimcha be'emes, simcha l'keinu imahem. That we should be one of those who trust you really, who believe in you really, that believe that all you do for us is good, and that there's a purpose for everything that happens in our life, truthfully. We should be on that level to believe so. That we should never be humiliated, ashamed of worshiping you, because we trust in you, Hashem. So anything we do, we shouldn't be embarrassed by carrying out your mitzvot. The person is embarrassed to do mitzvot, then they don't do that properly, because they don't want people to see them doing mitzvot, so they do them less perfect. And that's, by the way, the very beginning of Shulchan Aruch. The first Ramah of Shulchan Aruch says the Ramah, "Velo yevosh mipnei hamaligim alav." Don't ever be embarrassed amongst people who make fun of you when you do mitzvot. You carry out the halachos and mitzvot properly. Don't be embarrassed by those who make fun of you. Be strong about it. This is the way Hashem wants you to do it, so we do it that way. So that's the lo nevosh ki v'cha v'tachnu. We trust in you, Hashem. We believe that we're doing the right thing. We should never be ashamed of who we are and what we do. Baruch atah Hashem, mish'an u'miftach l'tzadikim. Hashem is the authority we can lean on. Mish'an is to lean, mish'enet. We can lean on Hashem and we trust Hashem like the tzaddikim do, and we want to try to be one of those. And by the way, just this last word, mish'an is the same noun that we say about the times to come of Mashiach days. In the last Mishnah of Sota, Masechet Sota, the last Mishnah there says that in the days of Mashiach, there will be very difficult times. Chutzpah yaske, yoker yamir, pnei adok, pnei hakelev, many negative situations that will develop in the days of Mashiach until he comes and rescues us. So the Mishnah there, it says, "Ve'ein lanu al mi lishayen ela al Avinu shebashamayim." We will not have anyone to lean on besides Hashem. Like times will be so bad, so difficult, that we'll just sort of throw our hands up and say, "It's up to you, Hashem. We can't do it. It's too difficult." That's what the Mishnah says in the end of the last Mishnah of Sota, in the days of Mashiach. We're hoping we passed those days already. Enough what we had in the Holocaust. You got enough of that. So, Rav Elisha Vishlitsky Zatzal explains something very beautiful about this sentence. It sounds like, like I said before, we throw out our hands and you say, "That's it. It's up to you, Hashem. We're giving up." He says, no, that's not true. That's not the right way to understand the Mishnah. Li'isha'en, to lean on, it's like a mish'enet. Mish'enet is like the stick that older people walk with. So he says, the stick doesn't walk for you, even though some of them are called walkers, but they don't walk for you. You lean on them in order to stabilize yourself to be able to walk. When you're unstable or feeling weak, so you lean on something and walk with it. So we still walk. We still do. We're not giving up. We just need to lean on Hashem. It's not going to be times where we just give up totally and we say, "Hashem, you do it for us." That's not li'ishayen. It sounds that way when you read the Mishnah simply. It sounds like Hashem is going to do everything. That's it. We can't do it anymore. But the true way of understanding li'ishayen is to lean on as we walk. But we walk. He doesn't walk for us. So that's a better way of understanding this Mishnah. It's going to be difficult, that's true. It's not going to be simple at times of Mashiach, and hopefully, again, the difficult times have passed. But we always have to rely on Hashem as we're walking. But do things, walk. Don't give up to and just say Hashem will do everything for us. Okay, Brachos. We start a new chapter, totally new chapter, past Ikar Tafel, all the complications there. Now this is a much more simple chapter. As of now on, the Simanim, it's based on the Simanim of Shulchan Aruch. The Simanim of Shulchan Aruch aren't so much the nitty-gritty details of Brachos. They're more about general rules that pertain to Brachos in general. And they're more simple to understand. These chapters from now on are more simple because they don't get into these teeny details of saying this type of bracha, that type of bracha, all the mixtures and all that. Yeah, but that's how the Shulchan Aruch set up his book. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, true. Could have been first that we first learn the rules and then we go into the details. Right, I don't know why I turned that this way. Why is actually it's not him, it's the tour. The Shulchan Aruch is based on the exact same simanim as the Torah, who first wrote a compilation of the entire Torah. Or Chaim, Yeridea, Eben Ezer, Choshen Mishpat, the entire Torah in a orderly manner. So it's a Torah. We have to ask the question: how come he set it up in this order? Anyhow, so we're going into the first general siman, talking about Mishiatza Imotzi Achirim. A person who has already fulfilled a certain bracha, or mitzvah that has a bracha to it, can he still be motzi someone else in that same bracha? Most famous in this situation is Kiddush, right? If you made Kiddush already and someone else hasn't heard Kiddush yet, can you make Kiddush for them? The obvious answer is yes, but we have to learn now all the different details of how and when do we motzi someone else.
Kiddush also is something you can make a lot of times.
Why? If you hear about Kiddush of the daytime.
Kiddush, like you could also then make Kiddush at your house, even if part of your Kiddush there's not a limit on Kiddush.
That's in the daytime. The Kiddush of the daytime, you're right, because all it is psukim and Borei Pri Hagafen. So every time, you can't do it every time, because if you say Borei Pri Hagafen in your house already, you can't say Borei Pri Hagafen again, just stam kacha. It's a bracha batala.
If it's like you sat down for a Kiddush and then are sitting to a meal an hour or two later.
Right. Okay, that's true because of the famous Gra that says the Kiddush can only be carried out while eating the main meal and not by having mizonos. That's his opinion.
He wouldn't have said it first.
Right. So you're not holding by the Gra, but we said, why not gain the Gra as well? So do it before the meal as well, even though there's not really a real effect to it. But you're right. Then there's a reason to say Borei Pri Hagafen over again. But stam kacha, you can't just say Borei Pri Hagafen over and over and over again. It's only if someone hasn't heard Kiddush can you say, repeat it again. When you've said Kiddush already, normally before your meal. Yeah, but that's very specific to Kiddush and during the day. The nighttime Kiddush, definitely cannot just repeat it over and over again because you're saying Brachot Hashem Mekadesh Shabbat. You're saying a full bracha. So you're saying a full bracha. You can't just repeat it whenever you want. It's only once for all. Unless you have to say Kiddush over again for someone who hasn't heard it. But now we'll learn in general, not only about Kiddush, we'll learn in general all the brachos and the different ways when and how can we be motzi someone else in a bracha that we don't need to really say. We're saying it just for them because they haven't said it or they don't know how to say it or for whatever reason, we want to be motzi someone else. So first we'll begin with Birkos Haneni, Shehakol, Ha'etz, Ha'adama, Bezonos, Hamotzi, all those. And we say over food, the drink, can we be motzi someone else in those brachos? Either because they don't know how to say a bracha, so we want to say it for them, or because they're not sure they made a bracha. Sometimes you forget if you made a bracha or not. You're in the middle of eating, and suddenly you stop to think about, did I say a bracha? Didn't I? And especially the after brachos, We're in the fashos, alamichya, because sometimes we forget if we said them or not. So can someone else say them to emotzi us because we're not sure we did it or not?
Someone else who already said it.
Oh, so it doesn't matter if they already said it or not. Birkas Hanenin, this is a very, very important rule. This is one of the first rules of to emotzi someone else. Birkas Hanenin, no matter if they said it or not, no one can say it for you. Because a Birkas Hanenin is not something you have to say. You don't have to eat an apple. If you eat an apple, you have to say a bracha over it, but it's not an obligation to say a bracha. To eat or to drink. You don't have to eat or drink. Unless it's related to a mitzvah that you're carrying out, which includes eating or drinking. Like Kiddush, or like a motzi for Seudas Shabbos, Lechamishne, or Havdalah. All these mitzvahs that are carried out together with a food or drink, those become like a mitzvah type bracha, birkas mitzvahs type. But they're normal birkas hanenin. Any food or drink you eat during the day that you're not obligated to, just because you feel hungry or you just want a snack or you just like, it looks good and you want to taste it. So any food you're eating or drinking, you don't have to eat that food. So it's not an obligation to say the bracha per se. You have to say the bracha before eating, but you don't have to eat. So no one can be motzi anyone in birkas hanenin. Bracha we'll get to bracha chorah soon. But first bracha rishona I'm talking about. Bracha rishona, shakol, eitz, adama, motzi, zonos. All those you cannot say for someone else unless you yourself are about to eat that same type of, not that same type of food, but the food that requires the same type bracha as this person wants you to be motzi them. You have to eat or drink on your own this type of food in order to make it, to say the bracha for someone else. And then it has to also be that you hadn't eaten this type of food before at that session of eating or drinking, because you don't need to say another bracha. So if a person tells you, I'm in the middle of eating something, it's hard for me to recall if I said a bracha. I'm not sure if I did it or didn't. Can you say a bracha for me? So if that person is willing to eat a food that has that same bracha that this person is confused about, did he say or not, then you could say the bracha for them by eating a type of food that has that same bracha, that requires that same bracha. That's how we do it. But if we're not about to eat or drink anything, we can't say the bracha for someone else. Unlike birkas mitzvos. Birkas mitzvos, we could say the bracha for someone else even if we're not carrying out that mitzvah at all. Let's say, maybe when there was extreme cases, a person having to put on tefillin, the man has to put on tefillin, and they can't say the bracha. It's not working out. They can't speak or whatever. A person could say a bracha, person who's obligated to the mitzvah, could say a bracha for that person while he's putting on the tefillin, or even putting on the tefillin for him on his arm or his head. You say the bracha for them, and they just answer Amen. You have nothing to do with the mitzvah. You're not putting on tefillin yourself now. You've done that already in the morning. Now it's in the middle of the day. You come to a sickly person or an elderly person. They can't do it on their own. They can't say the bracha. You can say the bracha for them, completely for them, without having anything to do with the mitzvah itself. If the person is obligated in general in that mitzvah. Okay, now, within what we just said now, that birkas hanenin cannot be said for someone else unless you yourself are having a food that has that same bracha, or drinking something that has that same bracha. Only then can you say the bracha for someone else. Even in that situation, there is a difference of opinion between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. Sfardim, Ashkenazi. For the Sfardim, it works the way we just said now, that you could eat something that has the same bracha as that person is now about to eat, and you can say the bracha out loud, and they are yotzei by your bracha. For Sephardim, that works perfect. For Ashkenazim, it's not so simple. As usual, Ashkenazim always complicate things. So for Ashkenazim, it's not so simple. They hold, we hold the Ramah, that even if you're about to eat or drink a food or drink that has the same type bracha that this other person wants to say, has to say, you cannot be yotze that person, motzi that person. He has to say it on his own. Unless there's a very, very specific situation that he can't say it. For example, he's not sure if he said it or not. The case we said before of a person who's eating and is not sure, suddenly tries to remember if he said a bracha or not, he can't remember. In that case, even Ashkenazim could say the bracha for that person, providing they're eating or drinking something on their own that has the same type bracha. But if it's stam, they're sitting down at the table, and the person says, I'll say ha'etz for everyone here at the table. We're all eating a food that requires ha'etz, and we're all going to listen to that person say the bracha out loud. We're all going to say amen, and then we eat. It cannot be done. For Ashkenazim, it can't be done. You can't be motzi even when you're about to eat on your own, and you're obligated to say that bracha. For Birkas Hanenin, on a simple situation like that there's no good reason to say to be motzi someone else, you cannot be motzi someone else. Reason is, why is that true? Why not? Why Shulchan Aruch says you can. Why would the Ashkenazim stop you from doing so? So the probable answer is that in order to be motzi in any bracha, whether it's Birkas HaMitzvot, Birkas HaNenin, Birkas HaShevach, any bracha that we say, in order to be motzi someone else, there's a very important condition that has to be met, even according to the Sephardim, who will allow Birkas HaNenin to be said for someone else. And that is kavanat mashmiya and kavanat shomea. There has to be a specific intent that the person who's saying out loud, the bracha out loud, has kavanah to be motzi those who are listening, and those who are listening have kavanah to be yotze from the person saying it out loud. You need a mutual kavanah. That's providing we have kavanah, right? Both sides. Both sides need to have kavanah, and only then shomea keon, right?
But at that point, is it always better to make your own, or no? Like in Havdalah, it's perfect. It's not better for everyone to make it.
Oh, beautiful. So Sarah's asking, I'll just repeat for the Zoom ladies. Sarah's asking, at that point where there is kavanas mashmiya and kavanas shomea and shomea keon and all that, is it preferable that one should say a bracha for all, or is it still better to say your own bracha? The answer is, where it's possible to say the bracha for someone else. According to Sephardim, every Birkas Hanenin. According to Ashkenazim, only Birkas HaMitzvos. Where it's possible, it's better yet for it to be said by one, and everyone else listen in and answer amen and eat by that bracha. Why? Berov Am Hadrat Melech. When you have a group of people all blessing Hashem together, and there's no more togetherness than one person saying it out loud for all. That means we're all together at it. The togetherness of Berov Am, we have a lot of people together, Hadrat Melech. That praises the Lord in a higher fashion than saying it separately, each and every individual. That's the concept. That's how you make Kiddush for all. That's how you make Havdalah for all, Hamotzi for all, instead of having each one have their own becher with wine and say their own Kiddush. Because Berov Am Hadrat Melech, it's preferable than one says for all. Exactly. Benching is already a birkas, sort of like a birkas of mitzvahs. It's although it's on food, but it's not birkas hanenin, it's a birkas of mitzvahs. So we're obligated after eating bread to say a bracha achrona. That's more like a birkas of mitzvahs. After we've eaten already, there's an obligation. We can't decide not to. For before food, we can decide not to eat. But after we've eaten, we have to say the bracha. So for bracha achrona, we haven't yet discussed how can we say bracha achrona for someone else. But you're right about Birkas Hamazon. Specific Birkas Hamazon, we could have said for someone else out loud for everyone to hear. But since it's very difficult to concentrate on every single word just to listen to someone, and follow every word. Sometimes our mind drifts to think of other things and it's a long bracha. It's 4 brachos actually. So it's hard for our mind to be concentrated all through Birkas Hamazon. Therefore, we don't do it that way. We don't say it out loud and be motzi, unless it's a group of people who don't know Birkas Hamazon. They just don't know how to say it. Then you say it out loud and you hope that they keep their concentration strongly. Nice, so
he's not supposed to do bracha until him because he does it all the time for everybody.
Oh yeah?
He says, who wants to?
Say, aha.
No, but I think in that case,
so I'll tell you.
No, but I think in that case on Shabbos, and whatever you eat, it is often people don't know what to say.
Or they don't say it, or they forget.
Or they forget to say it, right. So for Bracha Achrona, I was going to get to it already next week, but I'll say it now also. It's not simple at all. Birkas Hamazon. Yeah, right.
You see why I come from
right. Birkas Hamazon is fine, as we said before, but that's not good because of it's too long to concentrate over every word. The other 2 brachos, Ala Micha and Nefashos, poskim say that it's better not to be yotzi someone else unless they don't know how to say the bracha. To remind people to say bracha achrona, of course you should. Remind everyone. Don't forget to say a bracha achrona. But to say that loud and to cover others, to be motzi others, the poskim say better not. The reason is because the first bracha. What's that?
You have to do more
homework on that?
Yes.
Because it's something very customary
I think
all the time, everywhere.
Are good. People say it wrong. They forget the word say. They don't know the end of it. And people also forget to say it. If you're saying people are sitting around in a kiddush, they don't say it. If someone's motzi other people,
right? Then they remember.
It's done everywhere, like the hatfila.
Okay, but that doesn't mean the poskim are wrong.
So he does say here. Rabaka says, "Kol ze dafka lechatchila, aval b'diavad yotzim yedei chova avi bracha achrona." B'diavad you're yotzi that way, but it's diavad. So the only thing is that if people forget.
Yeah, but like in the camp, they'll say, I'll say that, and then they'll say amen, and then everyone say the Kohen Nefesh by themselves. They do not do it.
I'll tell you why. Maybe they don't know.
Say it along together.
Maybe the
shout
campers
loud together, but they choose.
Camp is different because people aren't.
Okay, Rav Katzin in his shul last week. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere?
Yes.
So I guess either people don't know the words. Maybe they don't know the words. Because of us,
so let's say, then you would say,
let's say it all together. Correct.
Like
let's say it together.
Just like you say, let's
Birkat
Hamazon
together.
Say it out loud, someone knows the words, but that's not what's done.
Right.
Another question. Let's say Yehuda says, "Can I have kavanah to come out to you?" And we all listen. But then should I still say it again on my own, or once he said it and we had kavanah?
No, then you can't. It's a bracha batala. No. Unless you have opposite kavanah. You say, I'm not being yotzi by this bracha. No, so I'll explain why. Even according to Sephardim, who we said before, allows say Birkas Hananid for everyone. Even Bezonos Shehakol, which we said Ashkenazim don't allow that. Each one should say their own bracha. Sephardim say you can say the bracha for others as long as you're having a food that requires the same bracha. Even that, there's a very important condition. Providing everyone is sitting down. If people are standing and you want to be motzi someone Birkas Hananid, even the Sephardim don't allow that. Why is that? Why is it so important to sit down? Because there has to be a sense of togetherness. Yachad. We're all together at this. You can't just be standing and say, okay, perhaps I'm saying for this and this person. That's not a chinas keva. That doesn't show you're sitting together and having the meal together. And that's part of the requirement to be motzi someone else and Birkas Hananid. So for Ashkenazim, right, because you said that's like Birkas HaMitzvos, because you have a mitzvah to eat bread then, right? But during the week, if you're having a slice of bread, you don't say motzi for someone else because it's not a mitzvah. You don't have to have bread. Anytime you don't have to eat what you're eating, you can't be motzi someone else, even if you're eating the same type bracha. Same type of food that requires the same type of bracha. So Ashkenazim don't do it at all. Sephardim would do it, has to be seated. Now, for the after bracha, the idea, the problem is that it's not necessarily, you're not connecting to one another because you're at that point, you're not eating together, you finished eating. You're not sitting achilat keva now. Before bracha, you're about to start eating. So if you're all seated, it's like achilas keva. You're all together, eating together. Now you're about to leave. So it's not considered connected enough. You're not considered as one in order to be able to be lechatchila. Oh, that's why it's besides Birkas Hamazon. Exactly. Birkas Hamazon, the zimun, the fact that you're sitting together, that connects you. But Birkas Alamichya, the Mari Nefashos, don't have a connection. Each one leaves when they leave, and you're about to separate. So it's not considered togetherness enough to cover someone else. Lechatchila, but di'evet, it works if you do it. It works. And if it's a case where you think people may forget or people don't know how to say it out loud forever, for all.
That's why I say.
But now lechatchila. Okay. Shkoach. I'll check it out further, but that's how we did. Okay. Shkoach. Take care. Have a good remaining week. Shavua Tov. Bye, everyone. Okay.
Thank you, Shavua Tov.
Very welcome. Call to bye.